What do you think is leadership? While you are at it, why do you think it's addictive?
So my answer probably is very individual, but it's swimming against the current, is really taking a different path compared to where the others would go, and then being able to persuade everybody else to follow you.
But you're talking about impact leadership or just leadership?
This is leadership.
Why do you think that leadership involves being against the current?
It's a good question. Therefore, I said it's very individual way, because that is my character. I've always done the opposite. Probably because I don't believe in the wisdom of the crowd.
Okay, so the opposite of, let's say, the society. You go.
The majority.
All right, not in the organization. So
no, to be honest, I don't really care about the organization. The organization is just a means to an end.
No. When I talk about organization, I talk about the people in the organization. So I assume
again, I operate through persuasion, not imposition or tricks. I see, for instance, at least in my experience, there is a fundamental difference between the leadership and the management. And I'm not the kind of manager. So an organization for me is just a means to an end. What matters is the impact you make. Therefore, I'm always thinking about leading the crowd. Then you do it alone. You do it with a small organization. You do it with a big organization. We do it with technology. We do it with a lot of money or little money. It doesn't really matter. What you want to achieve will determine the means that you need. But it's really secondary. It's what you want to achieve, what you think has to be achieved, or what is needed to make the next step. Because often, at least in my experience again, you're very clear about the final goal and the next step, and you don't know what happens between the next step and the final goal. And so you tend to adjust. And adjustment starts with those means. And you need a lot of flexibility. So for instance, I'm very good at emergent situations with a small team of highly talented people, and then you bring in whoever or whatever you need based on the challenge.
Okay.
I'm not, for instance, the kind of person who would be good at large army, all very organized, a lot of processes, and when there is the challenge, you fight because you have a plan. What I do is to build very strong relationship in terms of mutual trust and vision and value sharing. So you become a bit like ants. You don't need to tell people what to do. Everybody knows what to do. But because you have built those very strong relationship and mutual understanding, that saves you a lot of time. A lot. I tend to do also this. That's also peculiarity in PlusValue, with partners and clients. Meaning that I often have that kind of relationships with people I work with. And it doesn't matter if they are within my organization or even in the client organization. But there are that kind of symphony, tuned vision and values. Then you adapt to the situation, but you know where you want to go. And you can, and if you maintain this, I think I've got better over the years to build this kind of understanding, harmony, strange way, it works. I've got better, and especially is lasting. So it's ultimately, it doesn't matter if you change organization, change a job, because that relationship stays, I would say that, for instance, one of my very important asset is my database. So my contacts, even if I worked with them 15 years ago in a completely different capacity, they are still trusted contacts that, based on the situation, are mobilized. And now they might be in government, in a corporation, retired, or what, it doesn't really matter. But because of the understanding built over the time, those are, it's like a militia that you can mobilize as you need. Certainly you have to have a project. Otherwise you wouldn't do anything with this kind of assets. In the last years I've been applying the same approach, but working as a consultant / partner of very large organizations. And so it operates, I like to think, as a bit like a virus of innovation, because if we find a hook, which is someone who shares that set of values and vision, it doesn't have to, it's not a conversion, but it's more an intuition that there is a common goal, and then through testing, prodding, working together, you realize, yeah, effectively we are aligned. That is the hook to the largest organization, and then you work in partnership with that person or that group of people to influence that very large organization. So you don't scaling your own organization, you scale transforming the large organization. It's exactly like a virus, and then making impact through the change that you make in that organization. And I think I've got something. I mean, I'm still working on it, but we have made some very interesting step ahead in the last 3 years. Initially, that was probably another important decisive turn in my professional career. Initially, I thought I could do this operating through governments or institutions like the European Union, and then influencing policy. So working like a lobbyist, ultimately. Yes, we were successful in generating new policy, but then policy fails or has failed to make a difference. So in theory, you influence a very small group of people that generates policy, and then policy has an impact all over. In the case of the European Union, all over Europe. But there must have been some sort of short circuit in the policy process over the last years. You produce policy and there is very little impact.
Isn't it because these things take time to...
I think also because there is a fundamental problem with policy making process at the national and international level, especially when you want to be really disruptive.
So, right. So
let me finish this.
Sorry.
But applying this in the business sector, where you make, first of all, a very clear business case, then you really can turn the Titanic. But somehow we have hacked that single level value dimension, profit, because if you make a business case and you can make it clear that you can make money, business listen to you and implement it, then if there is more, it gets attached. And probably it's too fresh to explain it or theorize it more. But it's happening. Mm-hmm. What I was pretty clear with the financial crisis, it was a progressive loss of leadership as vision and political capital and resources in politics. So I ended up working with the private sector because I've seen this shift. I experienced it. What I didn't realize how effective we could be in the private sector. And that is probably what makes me excited.
Okay. So, from what I understand, you started by trying to achieve social impact by influencing policymakers.
Yes.
And then you realized that you could be much faster and have more impact by influencing the private actors. Are these two types of social impact the same? The ones that you can achieve?
No, I think they are very different, and also probably is not correct to keep them separate. Because we have been also very effective with business sector because the background in policy, and so bringing also that dimension somehow to translate the public value mission and using the power of the markets and the business sector to drive it. So it's not one excluding the other one. Moreover, when useful, using the power of public sector, so regulation, public funding, legitimacy, to validate or accelerate the private sector action. Taken separate, yes, they are quite different. They are quite different because of the nature of the power, nature of assets, the people they attract. But then it changes quite a lot from context to context. So my school of policy making is the UK. And when I started working in other European countries, I realized how politics and policy making is different in other countries. Now, these days I really commute between London and Milan, and so I continuously compare Italy and the UK. Still both difficult countries. Brits are strategic, Italian are tactical. So with the Brits, you always have to start with the vision, and you write a vision paper. So because it's a hierarchical society, it's an order society, so you have to provide where to go at the end. Mm-hmm. And then the details will follow. Mm-hmm. But if you don't explain the long-term plan, they don't even listen to you. Italians, if you start with the strategy, they look at you like, is this poetry? I mean, they don't even take you seriously. Mm-hmm. While they are super tactical. So what can I gain? What I can lose now? Tomorrow, next step is already too far from me to think about it. Mm-hmm. And so it's very difficult. It's difficult to theorize what is impact in one context, in another context. My conclusion, that might sound a bit too generalist and simplistic, it's context-based, meaning that talking about impact in general terms means very little. Okay. And even within the same country, within the same geography, you would really struggle at making generalizations. But what I would have answered you 10 years ago is very different from what I would answer you now. 10 years ago, it would have been a socioeconomic answer. Mm-hmm. it would have been about shared prosperity. But because we didn't envisage the kind of existential challenges that we face now, the answer today is political. Political not in terms of party politics, which is really irrelevant, but is about the kind of global society we want. So it regards from climate change to certainly a question of socio-economic organization, but not justice, survival.
Right.
And what you mentioned before, which is something I grapple with every day, so the impact of the digital innovation. And it's not only digital, because it's also genomics, and so how research and science is going to impact on our society, of which innovation, technological innovation, is the first manifestation. That is really, for me, today, what impact means. Then, do we have a problem with social justice? Yes, for sure. But when we look at where genomics is going, we are putting in question the future of humanity as a species. When we look about digital innovation, artificial intelligence, and what it might create, we are putting in question humanity as a society, and humans as purposeful, meaningful creatures. I think we are grappling with challenges which are very much more dramatic. And 10 years ago, we couldn't envisage this. We thought we were really working hard. We were completely
missing the point.
Yes, yes.
And so, and you still believe that the biggest impact you can do is through private actors, or is influencing, because all the things that you, or not all, but many of the things you talked about, like the environment and the effects of artificial intelligence, all these things, as you said, these things are, or apparently can be solved, or we can work towards a goal only if we use
let's put in
politics, then
okay, no, I follow you.
Then why focus
so
there?
I never give direct answers, but for once, let's say more general. The answer is no. But unfortunately, at this moment, we can only work with the business sector. There is no space in politics to address these big challenges. There is no way to do it. It's a suicide to do it. You will be pillared the following day you raise, no, in the exact following moment you raise your hand, trying to mention, guys, genomics is going to affect everybody, poor and rich. It doesn't matter where you come from and how lucky or unlucky you were. With business in this moment, and in particular, let's say investors, institutional investors, the largest investors, who have to work in a time scale which in the past was the time scale of public institutions, pension funds. I have to invest the savings of my clients for the next 20 years, for the next 50 years, in order to achieve my mission and so give them returns. Not really because I care about it, it's my job. My job saying I need to think about the next 50 years. So what I have noticed that, I mean, I'm not the only one, is not being public or being private that defines if you are pursuing a public or a private mission. Is the time length, is the short-term game, is the long-term game. In this sense, I don't really care if you're private and public. I want to know what kind of game you're playing. If it's short, for me it's equivalent of the business. I make money today or I don't. If it's long term, then this equivalent to a public value mission. And I've been working on a couple of projects of this nature. For instance, now the most interesting I'm involved with is Milan Innovation District. Now what makes it unique is a new district of the city, 70,000 people, big number, from scratch. There is nothing because it's the development of the Expo 2015, the site, 100 hectares. Is a center that, the district that will bring together the supply, the entire value chain of life sciences, from research, genomics, to the industry, which means nutrition, medicine, the manufacturing related to this. So in a microcosms, you have the complexity of a globalized industry in all its ramifications. The most interesting thing is that this is a concession for 99 years. It means the developer has a stake in the success of that place as, actually not as, longer than any other public institution. Probably only the Catholic Church would understand that length, because it's beyond your life. So it doesn't really matter if you make profit tomorrow and screwed up the rest of the 98 years, because your job is to create and preserve a value for the next 99. This is a long-term game. And I don't think it's the nature of the sector that determines if you do this game or not. It can be structural, so certainly the Catholic Church, but also the Chinese Communist Party has the same challenge. What are the similarities between these two? Long-term game, otherwise not anything else. And the conditions for the prosperity of that specific business. Not that in that case the developer is a good guy. They're not good, the developers. They're sharks. But then, and this is can be the role of the public sector, to design a business model that forces the private sector to align with a public value mission. In this, I see a bit of hope.